Hello cycling friends and welcome back to the biggest Swift cycling YouTube channel. Today we're gonna be doing another virtual bike race on Piqui Pavé. Now this course is supposed to be in France, but just like in the Tour de France, the home crowd advantage never seems to make the French actually perform decently. As you all know, I recently reached the B category on Zwift, putting me in the top 30% of all virtual cyclists in the world. And today on Piqui Pavé, we have a couple of strong contenders that you all might be familiar with. For you all that haven't watched any of my racing videos in a while, let me give you a quick rundown. Up here on the top left are my current power, my RPM, resolutions per minute, also known as the cadence, my current heart rate, the average wattage in this race so far, and of course the gear that I am currently in. Now, as always in the Zwift races, the start is fast and it's important for me to stay with the main group to optimally make use of the drafting mechanics that Zwift has. Luckily, as I'm a bit of a heavier rider, it is very difficult for others to drop me on flat terrain as my absolute power is significantly higher than most other people. Now, this course contains two major climbs, and the first one is about 40% in, and the second one at the very end, as this is a mountaintop finish. Now, my plan normally is to use rage baiting certain nationalities into doing more work, pulling the group forward and potentially blowing themselves up too early. This time in the lobby, I mentioned that my plan was to drop all French riders on the first mountain, so I wasn't surprised to see a couple of French guys trying their hardest to up the tempo in the first 30-35% of the race. I generally find that whenever you target Western European nationalities, they are most easily tricked into putting in lots of work for the group to prove that they are strong riders. Now, as I said, the tempo was very high from the start, and during a moment of inattention, the famous Dutch rider R. van der Werf didn't manage to close the gap between our group and the group in front of us, and we ended up splitting in half. I had to use some of my power to close that gap before our first ascent of the day. And generally when I'm going up mountains, as I'm a bit of a heavier rider, I need to put a lot of my effort into those little climbs. So having to use a lot of effort just before a climb starts is definitely far from ideal. And as you can see here, I am the only one putting in the work to actually close that gap. So yeah, quite a bit of energy lost. Luckily, up until the first little mountain that we encounter, there's no major happenings anymore. So here we go, going up the first little climb that we have got going here. We're still with a big group. I'm currently in the 30th position. I think there's still 34 out of the 40 initial riders that were around. Usually the first climb, you get, you separate the boys from the men. And in this case, I definitely felt like I was one of the men. You see a lot of these guys already popping their power-ups, just like in Mario Kart. You can get power-ups. Everyone gets a feather here, which makes you a little bit lighter and thus easier to climb these types of little hills or mountains or whatever it is that you have. I decided to not pop it quite yet, as I wanted to use it for the final ascent of the day, as I was planning for a podium finish. And if you're planning on doing well, you better save your power up till the very end, and you might surprise your opponents for it. So seeing all these little green feathers pop in front of me and me struggling a bit to hold on, heart rate going up to 170 BPM. So definitely having to put in some serious effort here, pushing somewhere between 4 and 4.6 watts for the duration of this climb so far. I'm managing to stay with the top group, and that's the most important thing, because if you're not with the fastest group at the end of this climb, they're just going to ride away from you on the downhill, on the descent, and then there's a very long flat part in between as well, and there's just zero chance that you're coming back, because the fastest guys are going to be in that first group, and if you're not with the fastest guys in the first group, you're going to have to do all the work yourself. And if you have to do all the work yourself, even if you might end up coming back in the end, you just won't have the energy for the final climb of the day. So you pretty much lose the race if you do not manage to finish with the main group on the top of this mountain. At least that is my general my game theory whenever I play one of these races. Now, as you can see, my heart rate still relatively high, just floating between 160 and 170. My max heart rate is I believe 191. So it's definitely at the higher end. I'm starting to sweat a little bit. my fan is needing to put in some serious work as I'm falling towards the back of this, what is it, 15, 16-man group that we have got going up into this little climb. And one of the reasons why you really want to stay with the group is that sometimes on a little hill or a mountain, there are some flatter parts. So right now we have an upcoming portion that's going to be like maybe 1 or only 2%. And their drafting mechanics become significantly more important than being a lighter rider. So having people in front of you that can, help you sit in the draft, and thus you can do a little bit less work, is obviously going to be a great bonus. On top of that, this little climb also isn't that high percentage wise. Like we're going down to the 4s and the 3s at times, so drafting still a bit more important. And towards the end of this effort, I can start my legs. Like I can feel my legs. They're starting to hurt a little bit right now. My heart rate is still going up. I'm really struggling to sit with these guys. They're probably significantly lighter than me. One of the things that I've noticed over the past few months is that very, very frequently I'm fighting against people that are 20, 25 kilos lighter than me, and thus they fly to the top of these mountains, and I'm sitting there struggling, sweating, smelling like a freaking nasty seal who just had 5 fish and a clove of garlic straight up his nose. So yeah, it's not ideal, but luckily I do manage to make it. We see one guy, look at this, the German here, Yu Horeth. He drops, what is this, like maybe 25 to 30 seconds before the end of this first serious effort, and it's going to have major consequences for him in the race because he's not with the first group anymore, and as a result that's going to really suck for him. And you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, wow, what a crazy performance by this Dutchman. He must have been cycling for well over 5 years already with these types of numbers. No, actually, I've only been cycling seriously for the past 8 months, and I've been improving rapidly due to the help of my coach, Luca Motz. Now, if you also want to be coached by him, you can go to his website, Performance Coaching by Luca Motz. Link will be in the description, of course. And with code Harstem, you'll get 50% off your first month. If you're French and you can't pronounce the H, you can also use code Harstem. That will net you a 30% discount on the first month. So really do recommend this guy if you're trying to get into running or cycling or virtual cycling. Be sure to check this out. So as I said, on the downhill, it's important to stay with the boys because they're doing a lot of the tanking. They tank the wind for you, and you can just kind of sit in their slipstream and have a good old time. Now, something that's very common in these types of races is that the front group will never get caught again, but it actually felt like we were going really slow for a long time until all of a sudden we get an attack here. I can't quite recall who this is over here, but we get an immediate response. As you can see, everyone is pumping the numbers a little bit. The heart rates are going up. The wattages are going much faster, and we have to put in some serious time. And these usually are make or break moments. If 2, 3, 4 strong riders manage to get away, and they start working together and they draft well, it's very difficult to catch up because no one wants to spend energy catching a group of potentially stronger riders. Even if you end up getting there, you still have to fight them on the final ascent. So there's just a lot of strategy here. I always like closing these gaps. As I said, I'm a heavy rider. I have a lot of power in me. I'll just speed this up a bit to see that I'm just kind of hanging in the back. I don't want to do this hard work by myself. I am starting to feel like we're not actually catching up with these guys, and that is starting to worry me at least a little bit. It's one of these things where if these guys get away, then you're not catching them. That would suck. Luckily, some other fools decide to go for it here as well. They're like, hey, you know what? This is too much. They're getting too much time. And you actually see some people now trying to drive away from this little main group. We have a couple of people chasing. So I think there's 2 at the very front. Then there's 2 chasers. And I decide now's my time to jump as well. If I want to make an impact in this race, I will need to be with the front 4, the front 5. Sadly for me, my acceleration isn't quick enough. And as a result, I actually end up pulling a lot of the guys that might have been dropped otherwise towards this group. We see the Dutch guy here in front of us, the Die van der Weide, once again putting in some work himself as well. But I'm pretty much pulling all the other boys behind me as my acceleration, my sprint, not great. I'm okay at longer distances, but yeah, the sprint and the quick acceleration, especially if we've already done, 20, 25 kilometers or so, I'm not as fresh anymore. Already had a little climb in the legs. Do end up meeting the rest of the boys as, the front kind of joins together and merges once more into this pretty sizable group before this little kicker that we get, like this small hill before the final ascent. I don't actually know what this ascent is called, but it's relative. Like, it's more of a hill. We can't call this it's a mole hill. All right, there's like some 3%, maybe some 4.5%, 5%, 6% inclines over here, but it's extremely short. It doesn't really count as a mountain. It's a tiny little hill, but still, if you get dropped here, don't forget, we still have maybe 2-3 kilometers to go to the final mountain. If you have to do that by yourself, life is gonna suck. Maybe you can make up the difference on the mountain if you're a superior climber, but generally you really do want to stick with the group. And I'd expected some more big efforts out of some of the cyclists here, but everyone kind of stayed together. I mean, we're pushing numbers for sure, but nothing crazy. And because it's not such a long climb, it's just one of these things like going 4.5 watts per kilogram is nice if you're climbing for 10 minutes, but if it's just for a minute and a half, really not that impressive. So I'm pretty sure everyone stays together over here, and yeah, no one really gets in any major trouble. I mean, the front of the race here is just very strong, so we know what we're capable of, and you're not going to drop anyone with an effort like that. And then for 5 minutes, nothing happens until we hit the final ascent of the day. 2.7 kilometers of climbing at 4% average incline. And we can immediately see some people just trying to get away from the group. Lots of big efforts. As I said, I'm not a great climber, but especially on these relatively flat efforts, I am okay, and if I can draft a little bit, that's great. I can maybe preserve some of my forces. We're here with, I think, 11 or 12 guys. I still see a French person in here as well, which is obviously very impressive. He's beating the odds. We kind of managed to stay together till the first major incline comes in right now. 6%, 6.6%. And here you see some people already popping their feathers. I'm starting to struggle as well, and at this point, if you can't hang with the top boys, I don't actually mind popping my feather either, because when you pop your feather, you just become a bit lighter, you go a bit faster, you might demoralize some of the fools behind you. They might want to give up if they see you fly away up a hill, ascending with top speeds. And here we go. I used my feather weight as I realized I couldn't really hang with these guys, and I wanted to still go for a podium finish, so a top 3, putting some serious effort as the heart rate goes up to 173 over here. Gets a little bit less steep at this portion. I think we go down to 3.5, and we get some blue portions later on down to 2 as well, but my legs are so tired right now. I'm not maxing out my heart rate, but my legs just aren't feeling it. Too much climbing for this heavy guy, and I try my absolute best to get maybe a top 5 finish here as I have these guys in my sight, but with 150 meters to go, I am not quite making it. I managed to overtake the number 7, but then he overtakes me again. So I end up with an 8th place here, about 12 seconds behind the number 1 finish. I had a 3.9 watts per kilogram, so very decent, and I'm proud of my performance.